looking at myself in the
Pardon.
mirror. Oh, you drove off? Oh my gosh. I even told you.
It was gonna be sitting on my truck.
Was it unlocked?
And I'm the only one at home, so it's just. Let's take a look at this next section. Go through the issues. Like I said, this is a pretty bare bones outline. These are some of the key pieces I picked out from the book. So I saw questions, or offer what you think are the key pieces. Like I said, there's no new teaching in here for anyone particularly. So try to work some of the questions we were asking earlier. Page 221 is the beginning of the section. Adultery is the first topic. Page 224 is where it quotes the, what I put there in the other, quotes the Catechism, paragraph 2381. It's on page 224. It's in the Catechism, and I'm reading from page 224. Adultery fails in his the spouse who commits adultery fails in his commitment, does injury to the sign of the covenant which the marriage bond is, transgresses the rights of the other spouse, undermines the institution of marriage by breaking the covenant which is based, compromises the good of human generation and welfare of children who need their parents' stable union. That's from the Catechism. One of the things that I highlighted on my outline on page 225, marital friendship is that which adultery primarily and immediately harms. Okay? Again, I get kind of weaving my way through this as what are some of the strongest pieces that would make sense to somebody past it's the sixth commandment, God said you can't do it. Okay? So these are the pieces that I would pick out. You could maybe pick out other ones before we move on to the other pieces. Page 225 that says, friendship is that which adultery primarily and immediately harms. And then he takes on the other answer to that is on the end of the section of page 227, what he calls consensual adultery. It harms the good of friendship. Well, what do we decide it's okay, though? What do we just mutually decide it's all right, it's cool? I mean, you have your fun, I have mine. What's the problem with that? Again, see, we know this by faith, but at the bottom of page 226, actually. This argument involves the false assumption that spouses' rights concerning each other's sexual activities are analogous to property rights or other rights that can be waived. You want to give consensual permission? Do you want to say, well, adultery doesn't hurt our friendship, it doesn't hurt our bond because we decided it's okay? Then is that just make sure, this is where I don't know how you do it, how you bullet point it, this is where I would say, is that really how you want to treat your spouse? As a thing. You have rights over them and you give permission to be doing whatever they're going to do. And likewise. Those, I think, are some of the key pieces kind of weaving its way through the adultery piece. What did you find? I want to go through these fairly quickly, so give me your questions or other things that you found in this section that were helpful or that were a question on this.
Well, one of the things, and when we had that anti-porn Saturday, remember the couple that came in, the guy and the girl, or the husband and wife? Even as long as it had been, is it just me or did you guys pick up the hurt that was still there with her? And that's what it immediately, and it's something that does not, and I would have to question, if you say, well, we're okay with this, I would have to question where is the actual problem in the relationship? Because there's something else underlying there.
I married my best friend, and to commit adultery, I think you would destroy friendship and trust for sure. And to take those core values out of a marriage, I don't know if that can ever be repaired. That'd take an awful lot of counseling and prayer. Could you ever trust that person again with everything like you do, like I do today? I trust them with everything.
And that's what's damaged, that's what's at the root. That's a great answer. And again, not because it's black and white, but we didn't offer anything particular in there about being a person of faith. We talked about the human reality and what's at stake. What else from this section before we move on? Okay, contraception. Again, nothing new. I mean, everybody knows the church teaching on this. What did you find in here? How can we make sense of this in a new way or a different way that will help us explain, witness to this truth that we're called to live?
The natural family planning, I remember my in-laws meeting with Father Adams, and my father-in-law, or it was my mother-in-law, so they said, well, the Catholic Church doesn't believe in birth control. And he says, yes, but in this way. And he introduced the natural family planning.
Okay. In this section, I think it's important to do that. I'm going to jump off of that. The first thing I put down there is because I think I'm a history guy, so one of the things that it points out is that it's in the realm, go back and forth, in the realm of faith, when it comes to our understanding as who we are as Christians, it wasn't until 1930 that there was any division in the Christian world about this teaching. Okay? Up until that point, teaching was unanimous. It's there on the page. You can go back and look it up further if you want to do, if you like me and you can like a little history. 1930, Lambeth Conference, the Anglican Church decided that who was allowed to contracept. This is a great part of this.
Married, that's part of this got me, was that they assumed that, they approved it only for married people, and they assumed that, oh, only married people will use this.
Only people married would use it,
Pretty naive.
and they would only use it for what purpose?
Serious reasons.
Serious reasons to have a limit on the family, which just to jump around a little bit, I mean, we still teach that as Catholics. There are serious reasons, grave reasons why a couple would have one child or two child or 10. There's reasons involved. But, so 1930, and the other document that is very easy, it's easy to read, Pius XI in 1930 answered that basically with that document that's quoted on page 227. But when I want to go to, unless you have a question or another piece here, I think it's important on 229, 230, those terms that he uses. I think it's very important to make sure that we understand how those are used. Okay? I do like, I'm a little bit partial, I kind of like the way he explains contraceptive intercourse. He's gonna be very specific, because like I said, he's the guy that kind of keeps trying to point us back to how does this all work? What is being done? Okay? Contracepted intercourse. That's why it's wrong. Okay? Because as he explains, most of the people, this is where, you know, you keep joking, this is where the milk jug thing does, I mean, what you intend to do makes a difference. What you intend to do is have intercourse. And then you do some other act to make it, what? Contracepted, to make it sterile. There's all sorts of things that can be done, but what you intend to do is have intercourse. But it kind of, in his understanding, he wants to make it clear then, so you are doing something wrong. You're not doing two different kinds of things, okay? Like I said, he's very big on this kind of distinction. You're not taking a pill, or whatever the case is. You're not using this device, and also kind of once in a while choosing to have intercourse. What you're doing is you're choosing to have intercourse, but you need to have some other thing that renders that act sterile. Okay, I think that's an important thing, because that's a little different than just saying things like contraception is wrong. The other terms that he defines on that page, again, make sure that we're clear when we talk about these things. Contraception, birth control, and natural family planning. This is where, you know, your distinction about, oh, well, yeah, we do teach this different things, but we call it this. Make sure that you know that that you use the right words. One of the things, this is easy, but again, my short way of doing bullet points is start to paint, basically what I call paint the outside point parts of the picture, right? When you do a jigsaw puzzle, what's the first part that you do? Okay, the outside. Why? These are not difficult ones. Jason's still one. Come on. Because it's the easiest part. Exactly. Start with the easy parts. Put on the board. What's the difference? If you're understanding contraceptive intercourse or contraception, put that on the board and put on the board birth control. Now, those are the same thing. Define them. This means I would start to work the edges of the picture. Those are the same thing. One is contraception. We're doing something to try to thwart contraception. The second one is
To thwart conception.
birth control. Actually, I wouldn't like, if conception happens, that's fine. I just want to make sure there's not a birth. This is why I would use those words. Okay? What's the most popular, one of the most popular ways of people, I mean, contraception. Birth control is abortion. Okay? In fact, so that's what I mean by painting the outside. It's not contraception at all. Again, you guys can do this, but put those two things on the board, irrespective of a faith dimension. I don't know what it is. It's actually, it seems to me still, what do I want to say? It's heartening, because I put those two things on the board, and you start to see people's eyes, you know, start to get squinty and say, well, no, okay, you know, condoms is one thing. But there still is a large percentage of people that say, when we talk about birth control, you do have a baby here. You have conception occurred, but you're going to make sure it doesn't get very far. Many, many times, it's very heartening to me, because when you put that distinction out there, people say, whoa, what? Really? And then with this tiny little bit of the medical pieces, you can say, that's what's happening when you do this. It's not actually doing anything to stop contraception. Conception could be happening all the time. What you're doing with this pill or this device or whatever the case may be, what you're doing is making sure that conception doesn't last very long. It's pretty heartening to me when they put that distinction out there and people say, wait, really? You can say, yeah, really. That's as I said, even before you kind of get to the Ten Commandments, there is still a general sense. So sometimes, that's my point with defining this. The church doesn't think it's, I mean, the last one, family planning. Or as you said, you know, you have to change the discussion when you say, no, we're not with this. In fact, over and over, especially in the document on the family, and over again, the church teaches that, in fact, you are supposed to plan your family. That's not a bad thing. Family planning. So, you know, that's another piece that sometimes is helpful in the discussion. The church, we get to the piece about in vitro fertilization. The church wants us to have as many kids as possible. The church wants you to have a marriage, which that's what we go back to. Life-giving, unitive and procreative good. Plan your family. So I think those key words, those key phrases, that understanding, sometimes is helpful. Okay? Like I said, when somebody says they don't want to have children, okay, talk about what that means. The other thing, and like I said, even when I taught high school, put those two things on the board, and just for the record, which one? They're both birth control, killing the baby after it's conceived, and contracepting are both intrinsically evil. It's on that list that we got from paragraph 80. Okay? But it's helpful to distinguish that they're not the same thing. Questions on this section on contraception? I'll keep going on the outline. Page 231, 232 quotes, long quote. We already read it through, but it's there again from Veritatis Splendor. So it's in Dr. May's book on 223, 222, 232, excuse me, 231, 232. It's a long quote from Veritatis Splendor that addresses specifically this claim of what he calls physicality. Okay? That says, this is my short, that says that the church is making a mistake by relying just on this dimension of the physical conception of the child. And it doesn't give enough emphasis to the other parts of what we're doing in marriage and what we're doing in our sexual activity. This is the long section that says you can try to do that, but the person, the human person, is always, always, always a body and soul. Okay. Says it much better and much longer, but that's what's at issue here in this section. Okay. Last piece in this section on contraception is he goes to the making sure that he answers the question of, is this authoritative? Is the teaching of the church on contraception changeable? Is it just for us now? Is it something that we have to kind of continue to reflect upon? And his answer is it's part of the authoritative teaching of the magisterium, and those are what he goes back to. On page 233, I'm not going to read it to you, that's in accord with Lumen Gentium 25, Vatican II, that's what LG stands for, Lumen Gentium. It's there in Dr. May's book on page 233. See, on this outline, I try to give you at least page numbers so you can go back and recheck it. Lumen Gentium 25, if you go way back to our class on ecclesiology, is the one that we pointed to that Vatican II said, okay, There's infallible teaching, and the Pope says blah, blah, blah. There's ordinary magisterial teaching that is this, always taught everywhere by the bishops in union with the Pope. Lumen Gentium 25 lays out the different levels of authoritative teaching. Dr. May in this section said, contraception fits in the most authoritative teaching that we have, according to Lumen Gentium 25. It's repeated in Familiaris Consortia number 32, which again in Dr. May's book is 235. Familiaris Consortio, paragraph 32, which is on Dr. May's book is the large quote in the middle of page 235. This is St. John Paul II now in Familiaris Consortia. When couples, by means of recourse to contraception, separate these two meanings, God the Creator described as being of men and women at the time of the subject, they act as arbiters of the divine plan and manipulate and degrade human sexuality, and with it themselves and their married partner by altering its value of total self-giving. So John Paul, St. John Paul II repeats it in Familiaris Consortio. And then the last quote we've already looked at, or the last thing on the outline, is Veritatis Splendor 78 and 80, which in Dr. May's book is 239. But that's the paragraphs that we already worked over a couple weeks ago. Okay. To say that yes, this is the teaching, this is why it is, and this is how we understand its authoritative teaching. Okay. Questions in here before we go to 241 in natural family planning? Okay. NFP and contraception, same purpose on page 241. Did you swear you had your question, sir?
No, well, it is, but that's, yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So let me pass it by, all right? On 241, again, it seems to me one of the key pieces that we can explain and talk about is how natural family planning can be different. Goes back to this, goes back to this thing about what it is that you do. Morality has to do with actions. Okay? At the beginning. For natural family planning, he explains. Anybody have a question about that? Or everybody heard that before? Natural family planning can be used in an immoral way. Did everybody know that? Did you catch that as we went through this? Okay, so fine. Is that what you got? Okay, is there a question there? You want to?
No, I just.
Okay. Because it has to do with, there are actions that are always wrong, no matter what the intentions and circumstances, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The other thing that we didn't didn't draw out was there's actions that are good, but through some other intention or end or circumstances or something, thwarts the moral good that you had chosen up here because of something that surrounds the act. You can use natural family planning for also, I mean, do you want to mention some? Just to make sure we're clear?
If I don't want to have kids, I could use it to not have kids, and
Exactly.
that's in the wrong direction.
Exactly. What else? Anybody heard stories or stories? Make stuff up. We used to teach, it seems like 100 years ago now, but we used to teach natural family planning. It can be used it can be used really badly if the spouses are using it as a club against each other. Okay? Sure, they're not, we skipped over, they're not contracepting, they're not doing any of those things that are intrinsically evil. But by choosing to do this, there's all sorts of, well, what do you mean? Honey, I mean, now's the time, right? I mean, what's the problem? or, you know, that aspect. It can be used, that information and that knowledge of the couple can be used in really, again, what's the harm? Harm that bond, the friendship of the couple. Okay? Can be used, there's lots of different ways.
So
Yes.
based on that example, they can be both morally wrong then if they're deliberate acts of omission, as
Correct.
Dr. May says.
Correct. Middle of page 241 is again, he tries to make it clear that what's different about using it in a legitimate moral way is what you're choosing to do or choosing to not do. Some of the things we just mentioned or can imagine are why you would do those things, okay? That may be a problem, but what you're choosing to do is different. That's why he uses, in a few pages back, that's why he wants to use that phrase, contraceptive intercourse, because that's what you're doing. It's very different when you use natural family planning because your choices are basically two. Abstinence or intercourse. Or both. See if you're paying attention. Those are the choices. Those are the actions. These are the ones that are non-action. I mean, those are your choices. Okay? That's what you're choosing to do.
You're always faced with your chart. I mean, even though that action is good, you could go down that path.
For sure.
So,
Absolutely. Back page. Any other things I'm moving through these, just again, that's the natural family planning piece. Other questions about that or comments?
About sterilization?
No. Last call before we move on. Okay, go ahead. Sterilization, next section. Questions?
I did. I had, on pages 244 and 245, they referred to that indirect sterilization is often or can be morally justifiable, and I don't understand how it couldn't be.
How it,
Could not be justifiably moral.
if it's indirect?
Right. Because they use, and I highlighted these, is often or can be, right in the middle of, well, it starts, the paragraph starts, the church condemns direct or contraceptive. Well, then down there below that, moreover, one could achieve the desired ends reasonably through other means, such as NFP. The church teaches that indirect sterilization is often justifiable. I don't understand why it would always be justifiable.
I guess, my understanding would be, it depends on what other factors are involved. Okay? Indirect sterilization for some other, immoral purposes is not gonna be justified.
Well,
If
on the
it's-
next page, they
Yeah.
talk about a sterilizing act performed precisely to remove a pathology or present the spread of disease can be morally justifiable, and I don't understand why that wouldn't always be the case.
Now, we had a lady in church who was young, but she ended up having to have a hysterectomy. That is kind of what they're talking about here, isn't it?
I guess,
That's
I
from
would,
the indirect, but it was a have to.
yeah, but I guess the only reason I would protect, or I would probably say it as can be, because I don't want to raise it to always.
But why? I'm trying to, that's what I'm trying to
Okay,
sort
okay.
out here, why?
So if you have an ovarian cancer with no time to spread, it's started early, and you opt to take out both ovaries because there's a risk of that, is that justifiable? For the risk,
So you're
for the
saying they could
possibility.
remove one versus two type of thing?
Yeah.
But there's things, that's a good example, there's things on the scale that would weigh, that say, yes, it is justifiable.
Right.
So when Dr. May says things like it can be, there are still things to weigh in there, I guess. Most of them, I mean, most of the ones that you're thinking of are what I would say, most of the ones we kind of immediately think of are easy. You know, if a woman is hemorrhaging and dying and, you know,
Right.
there's not a conception, there's no baby there, I mean, we're gonna do an operation to save that woman after some accident. That's indirect sterilization, and that's an easy one, that's justified. But other things put on the balance can, or maybe not. Yes, go ahead.
I met a woman, and this is years and years, I mean, this is quite a few years ago. The doctor knew she was Catholic, she had 3 kids in a row, and he let her have a hysterectomy, you know, just to take care of the problem.
Okay.
Not necessary. Right, I mean, to me, it was not medically necessary, and she let me know that her guilt was years and years and years
Sure.
later, even after she left the church and
Sure.
became Baptist, you know, for her to tell me that, you know, mostly because her husband was encouraging it. And that was so sad.
And in that case, though, that would be clearly a case of just sterilizing on purpose,
Right.
not the kind of that we're working
Exactly,
at.
well, she said, I had a hysterectomy,
Right.
you know, to take care of the problem, so I wouldn't, and I knew it was against, and she knew it was against the church.
And what
And I
was
thought, well,
the
that
problem?
was quite interesting.
The problem that she was fixing was,
Yeah,
It worked.
it worked,
I mean,
Or-
it's what
or-
it's supposed to.
or there's women that I know that battle issues, and one of the options is to have a hysterectomy. It would take care of their problem, but
Sure.
it isn't so severe that they can't live with it until they're beyond childbearing.
Okay.
That's another one.
do you hear the distinction? That's the other point. Do you hear the
You're-
distinction? Okay, the distinction, say it again, because that's part of the problem.
There's women in childbearing years that have issues that having a hysterectomy is an option. They aren't, you know, they're not gonna die from the condition, but they could opt to have a hysterectomy to take care of the problem, but it would also, but it's not life-threatening, so they have a choice. Medically, it looks like it would be okay, but, you know, is it really?
And at what point, this is where
Right.
Dr. Mays,
I know somebody who waited until she was beyond childbearing.
and at what point is it,
And
at
then
what
she
point
had-
is it, and who helps make the decision about when it's life-threatening or life-changing
Exactly.
or grave matter? You know, there could be easy, open and shut cases about, we're not sterilizing the person, we're doing this. And there's other cases where it's not so.
Well, again, it comes down to the medical diagnosis and the choice.
Well,
I mean, basically, that's what it comes down to, right? I mean, whether it makes it justifiable or not justifiable.
Well, the other piece I want to enter into this discussion about, because he mentions it in the we just finished it, Bruce. He mentions in the section about natural family planning. The other dimension I want to put into this discussion is that even the church tries to have us understand there's a difference between what we're called to do morally and what we might be called to do heroically. Okay? The commandments, this is a short way of looking at it, the commandments always oblige. Okay? The cross is an invitation. There are 2 ways that a woman can deal with things. I mean, anybody know any one of these cases? Where childbearing may threaten the life of the mother. In fact, most medical authorities would say that it will. And she says, let it be done unto me according to God's will. I'm okay with that.
St. John of Moore.
That's a heroic virtue. But even the church wouldn't oblige somebody, you know, you're not obligated, I'm sorry, you know, first, you're not obligated to jump into the street, to grab somebody, to pull them out of the way of the bus. You're not obligated to do that. Okay? That's a heroic act of virtue on your part to save somebody else's life. Thanks be to God, I've never been confronted with that, because I don't know what I would do. Okay, in moral cases like this, some of those same things can come into play. You know? It's a danger, it's a cross, it's a cult, and I accept that. And that's what we end up calling them what? Saints. Okay? Okay, last couple things. So, steroids, I'm on the back of the page. Direct or indirect, good, page 240. Other violations of marital chastity, he talks about them a little bit on page 246. Again, I put moderation and self-restraint. Basically, that's Dr. May's language of, if even in marriage, you can seriously degrade and treat your spouse as an object. Okay? It's never been the teaching, it's always been the teaching of the church that the goods of marriage and pleasure and sexuality are a good thing. It's never been the church's teaching that you still get to treat your spouse like an object for your pleasure. It's still about the good of the spouses and procreation. So that's what the other violations of marital chastity is about.
Self-giving.
Right. Artificial insemination and in vitro fertilization. Real quick, we'll get to the condom question for a last couple minutes, because we're going to come back to this one in the next section of the reading about bioethics. Okay. 248. Again, why is there an issue with making babies? He gives the three basics. It violates obviously everything we've said so far about the unitive and procreative meaning of the marital act, the spouses and intercourse. B, the language of the body is nowhere present with that kind of process. And again, kind of using his he always kind of ends up or kind of works the reasonable, rational, kind of intelligent. I mean, are we really want to get into the business of making other people? Because that's what we're doing. We're creating. Great. Yeah. I mean, there's a great, remade 1,000 times. Frankenstein is a great book. It's about that moral question. We're going to create life. We're just going to make it ourselves. Okay. So that's obviously going to be a problem. We kind of reasonably can figure that out. We don't want to put ourselves. So that's his last reason. Okay, last section, a couple minutes about this. Spousal use of condoms. Okay, if you got the short gist of it from Dr. May's book, basically Pope Benedict at one point said, especially for those places that are ravaged and sexually transmitted diseases are very prevalent and many times fatal, mostly because it's HIV, yes, but also other sexually transmitted diseases because the medical care is just not sufficient to help treat those people. He offered at one point that if a spouse knows that they're infected and uses a condom, maybe it's, this is my words, not Pope Benedict, okay? But I'm making it simple. Maybe that use of a condom is the first step in caring for somebody else. Okay, that basically was reported as what?
Both of these kind of-
Both think this is a good idea. We're gonna all in on it. No, in fact, and it's a quote on page 250 in Dr. May's book that basically says no for two reasons. Again, one kind of reason attests reason. They're insufficiently reliable. If you really know you have something that could potentially kill the other person, and you say, I'm gonna take precautions that are, I don't know, 70%,
Anything with that.
60%, yeah, so I mean, so you're good, right? You like the guys. They're insufficiently reliable, and then the second half is, and they're unacceptable from the moral aspect as well, or in addition to, or depending on which way you want to go.
That statement from Pope Benedict, it's kind of like going into the confessional and telling the priest, I'm sorry that I can't forgive that person. You know, you're supposed to forgive, but okay, I'm sorry I can't, but I'm not going to forgive that person.
Okay. It's a good start, but it's not much. Is that what you mean?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. It's a good start.
And that's kind of what Pope Benedict was saying there.
That's a good start, but that's, you didn't give us much to work with. Other questions or comments, we'll wrap it up. It's time. So next time, actually, I'll wait a second. Any questions, comments? No, 25 questions, 29 questions.
You get severely chastised today.
We got rocks.
Why don't you
down,
get the
guys.
secular maroon church today?
Okay, next time is a relatively short section out of the beginning of the bioethics books, page 19, pages 19 to 57. But what he does is he kind of goes through his own, again, very kind of quick outline of all the key documents that have to do with bioethics. So we're going to take our time with those and walk through those next week. Some of those we've already mentioned in our wanderings so far, but this is a good beginning section. We'll go with that next week. Pages 19, 57, and 57.
I got a road down.
Good? Thumbs up. Jason, how are you?
I'm awake. Why would
All right,
And your goodness.
volunteer or somebody, volunteer somebody, please. We can do it.
John, you want to burn that? I'll make a burn that and take a day will and the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the time and the talent that DJ gives us in his classes. We ask that you be with us all as we begin our acolyte experiences and through our parochial unit. Help us to grow in love with you and to grow in love of service. Keep us all safe as we drive home. And let us end, please, with a Hail Mary, full of grace.
The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Holy Spirit.
Be with you.
With your spirit.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you and give you his peace. And may Almighty God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Thanks be to God.
What did you wear?